is our subject. Probably 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. It's just really big, and I think that big would be good for this demo. Small would be hard to see. Might be hard enough to see with my video equipment anyway. But what we want to do is we want to measure around this. If you have one of those flexible tape measures, that's great. But this is about 5.5 inches around completely. You want to get the circumference. And then you want to add for the top. And the top part is all this wire that you see coming out the top. And you want about, just so you don't mess it up, you want about 3 inches at the top. So what you need to do is you need to double that. So if you need 3 inches, we're going to add 6 inches. So we had 5.25. We're going to go all the way out to 11.25 on this. So we're just going to remember 11 inches is a good solid measurement to remember. So we're going to form our wire 11 inches long. So let's do that. Okay, so what type of wire are we going to be using? Well, we're going to use the 18 gauge, which is a thicker gauge wire, to do what's called the frame. The frame, which is the exterior, or what really holds most of the rock inside the wrap. It's the thick wire that goes around it. That's what we just measured the circumference for. So this thick wire is going to be used for the top part, which is the bail. It's also going to be used for the outsides. So I'm using this 18 gauge. This is full round wire. It's called half hard. You could use dead soft wire if you want something that's really easy to flex, or you can use the silver filled stuff, which is solid silver, and it's very difficult and hard to twist. But this half hard will allow us to do some twisting with it. So we're going to use a half hard, and this is the 18 gauge with a thick wire that we cut for the outside, and it's exactly 11 inches long. So that's going to go around the outsides or the framework of this piece, and that's what we just cut. The next thing we're going to cut for ourselves is some of the other round 22 gauge. You can use something called half round. A lot of people do, but I'm not going to, because I don't think you need it for this demonstration. And just rip off about a foot of this stuff and cut off yourself about a foot. Okay, and that's going to give you something that you're going to twist around this 18 gauge wire. It's going to be used for the sides, and it's going to be used for the tops. But honestly, 12 is enough. You probably just don't even need to straighten it. Just it's going to be used to wrap around the thicker gauge wire. Okay, so now that we've got the wire, let's help ourselves by preparing some painter's tape. And basically, we're just going to cut off some sections that we're going to use. You can use them, they're about this big, and just stick them to the table or someplace where it's easy to get to. It's kind of like wrapping a present for Christmas. If you have tape around at your disposal, when it comes time to applying the tape, you don't have to fumble around with the present to get some of this tape in your hands. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take various widths and sizes and cut off some small strips for myself that are real small for certain tight work. And we're going to show you how this is used in a minute. But just have these around. That way you don't have to fumble and do this cutting during the middle of your project. You've already got a bunch of this stuff on the side. So now that that's done, we can move on. Okay, so now that we've got, by the way, I'm not an expert at this at all. I think I may have mentioned that earlier, but many people are going to see me make a lot of mistakes during this demo. So I would just, take it with a grain of salt. This is sort of the basics. I'm just doing my best to give you my interpretation of how I learned how to wrap, but this is by no means a guide that you should teach a course with. So remember how our main wire was 11 inches long? What we're going to do is we're going to mark the midway point of that. We're going to put our 4 wires together. We're going to hold them together like that, and we're going to measure to the halfway point. I want to know where the halfway point is, and then this is where that Sharpie comes in, kind of using the Sharpie lightly, but not too heavy in case one of those wires decides to flip around on you and go to the front or the outside. We're going to mark the middle, and that's going to be kind of important. I'll show you why in a minute. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make our very first wrap right there on that middle spot. But in essence, we're going to start at the bottom of this wire and work our way to the top, and at the end these two will be sticking out near the very top, and they will be at the ends right here will be at the top here, and we want it to be equal, the equal amount of wire on the left side to the equal amount of wire on the right side. So we're marking the midpoint, and we're going to do our first wrap with that. Okay, so we're going to take one of the small pieces of painter's tape that we just used, and we're going to form it right there on, this is the way I do it, okay? But form it right on those 4 pieces and wrap it fairly tightly. And we're going to take another one of those and we're going to do so on the other side, because we're going to lay a piece of wire right in the middle of these two, but I don't want these 4 wires to move. I don't want them to be twisting like this, not where I'm laying the wire down. So I just want to make sure that.